Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Mary Grace Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity, to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. And today, our guests are going to help us cover many of those areas. And we have with us a special couple, a homesteading, homeschooling parents of 8 children. This is the Fearless Family Texas Boys podcast host, TD and Faith, coming to us from, you guessed it, Texas. Hi, guys.
Yes. Hi.
Hey, Mary Grace, how are you?
Thanks for having us.
Good. It's great to have you. So, a little bit about your story. You are kind of refugees from the Northeast. You moved down to Texas, and you've been there for quite some time. You don't actually have like a weird Northeast accent. So, when you say Northeast, what does that mean? Where exactly did you transplant from?
We're from the tri-state area, so like near Philly.
Mhm.
You don't even act like it. You don't.
We try not
We
to.
shook it off. We shook it off on our way down.
So, what prompted you to leave the area?
So, culture is one thing. So we have pretty conservative values, family values, and although all of our family on both sides were up there generationally, we just really felt like we were kind of born in the wrong state our whole life and felt like we were born in the wrong part of the country. And we just really had a desire to raise our children in a more conservative area where family values were valued and traditional family was a moral thing that you strove towards and that was encouraged, and also just a place where they could engage in the culture around them and just have a strong community culture. So we just started looking at a lot of the different cowboy states, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, a lot of the Midwest, Southwest states. And then we had our parameters that we were looking for. We had our check boxes and some of our priorities. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we were focusing on, strong homeschooling laws, obviously the
Mhm.
Second Amendment, that states that were really solid on the Second Amendment, states that were much less regulated because we knew we lived in a densely populated area and we knew that we wanted to move to a very rural area where we could kind of spread out. And so we were looking in rural areas that didn't have like building restrictions and bureaucracy. So,
Mm.
um, and originally we almost ended up in Oklahoma,
Yes.
but a huge tornado hit the area we were going to prospect. So that's when we diverted to
Yeah. Well,
Texas.
we almost ended up initially in South America, looking at Belize,
Belize, yeah.
actually. And we were really
Wow.
open to whatever. And another thing that was important to us was just being somewhere that was strong economically and that had a good growing season and that our children could buy homes and live on a
Mm.
single family income potentially when
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
became adults and married. It was really important to us that they could, the cost of living would be reasonable so that they could have that quality
Mhm.
of life too. So
Eh,
they were all the big factors, I think.
what you did, what a lot of people did, during COVID,
Yeah.
but you were ahead of that,
Yeah.
and something that I think is interesting, there's a show that I watch called Homestead Rescue,
Yeah.
Yes.
and you can see from that show that there's all different scenarios, but it's obvious that some of the people who are being served by the show, uh, didn't think it through.
Mhm.
That they had a knee-jerk reaction to whatever was going on, and but it's clear they don't really say it, but reading between the lines, people, uh, were trying to escape certain areas
Sure.
because of COVID, and now they're kind of stuck or they didn't think it through. You guys really planned. I mean, you really you thought I can see you kind of whiteboarding this and
Yes.
checklists and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Now, how did you meet originally? Because you seem very compatible and like-minded, and you got these two independent thinking, Second Amendment advocate, uh, New Jerseyans, right? And you're like, how did those two people find each other in a sea of wokeness?
Well, that would be the Lord.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
miraculous intervention there, divine intervention. And, it's just the grace and mercy of the Lord. I mean, we've
Mhm.
been married now 26 years. And
Yeah, we met at college.
yes, we met at college. We met at
Okay.
a community college, and we were both in our last year there, our last
Mhm.
semester there. And then we both
Wow.
transferred to a state college. He had already done some college before that.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow.
Um, so he had gone to Bible college for
Okay.
a year, and then he had done some more. He was doing, like, I don't know, the long-term program at college. Like, he was taking every major that he could take, and like the hardest majors that they offer, engineering and stuff, and then just like doing all of the classes and then going
Mhm.
on to the next thing. Yeah. So anyway, school came easy to him, as you can imagine. And so
Mhm.
taking all of those different things, like, no, I'll just take all the business classes. Like, no, I'll just take, like, what are you doing? Like, you have a million
Well, I was
credits.
trying to graduate, but they had this convoluted calculation process of
Yeah.
like what you need to graduate, and
So
I
so
was
then
trapped.
Oh.
so then we transferred to the same state college, and then we were
Mhm.
there, and then we finished up there. So we had a lot of common ground. I guess you would say the Lord, I mean, just our faith was a lot of common ground there. We were raised similar,
Mhm.
in the same area and all of that
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But our faith was really just has been, always is the backbone of our relationship.
That's great, that's great, and so you kind of gelled from the start. You didn't have to go through those growing pains of, like, one of you becoming a Christian, the other one hating you because of that,
Right,
and then
right.
and then deciding, "Well, okay, I'm just gonna join her," that kinda thing. So, alright, so you you decided to move, you already had a few kids at the time, you had boys, and so when you
Mhm.
got to Texas, you named you named your whole operation the Texas Boys, and then some girls came along and you decided not to change it.
Yeah.
So I hope they're not in therapy over that.
No, it's just
But
one girl,
Just
just
one
one
girl.
girl.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So 8 kids and all
Si
So
there's 6 kids and
oh,
us 2, so
family of
there's 8.
8.
Yeah,
Okay, how did
family of
I
8,
get
yeah.
8 kids?
yes, that's
But
okay,
you
that's
still have
okay.
to have a big vehicle. I mean,
Yes.
you
Yes.
can't have, like, a regular run-of-the-mill
No.
SUV. What do you drive?
Well, now we have a Honda Odyssey, and now our 3 oldest boys are all
Yeah.
driving, so now we can kind of,
Pick.
yeah, now we can kinda split up and caravan.
Yeah, yeah, and now we have a daughter-in-law
Now we have a
too.
daughter-in-law, yeah.
So we're
Okay.
back to, yeah, so we have 7 kids
Yeah,
now.
yeah, so now we have 7.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but in the early days when nobody was driving, did you have one of those big panel vans? Kind of a
We
We've had every
we
kind of
yeah,
vehicle.
we had a Sprinter at one time. We've had,
okay.
the big Ford, the 12 or 15 passenger Ford van.
Yeah.
Um, there was a period of time when us and all of our friends had, like, Ford passenger vans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we thought
Yeah,
we were gonna continue to have children too, so it
Yeah.
just, then we went
yeah.
back to the minivan, the 8 passenger, and we squeezed in there. Little kids, they can squeeze and you can make it all happen, but, and then as
Mhm.
they get older, they start driving, so then you just,
Okay, yeah.
divide and
So
conquer, yeah.
yeah, and then you just give them, like, the old van, right?
No,
No,
they're
we've part of the process of, and this is,
I'm laughing because our boys would not. They
yes,
would be like,
no,
"No."
they
They're
would,
very entrepreneurial, so
yes.
our
Okay.
kids mainly have more, wallet money than us most of the time. I
Yes,
was
Okay. Okay,
they
so they
purchased, 3 vehicles. So, yeah, so they have F-350 and then a Toyota Tacoma. So
Okay, okay, so
yeah,
they had goals, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
This was
they
yes, yeah,
have
yeah,
newer
Yeah.
vehicles than
yeah.
us, Mary.
That's
They have
so funny. You know, I have friends who had 4 boys and, they weren't homesteading, but they did, you know, some things that I thought were very good in terms of just being family centric and they taught them, you know, how to save money and even though they were quite well off, their boys didn't always get the newest, greatest, latest thing, right?
right.
And their oldest boy, when he was learning to drive, they had this Toyota, van, and by this time, the van was, like, 15 years old, right? And 4 boys had been carted around in that van, so you know what it looked like.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the dad was out driving around with the oldest boy, with his, doing his, with his learner's permit, and his son looked at him and he goes and they went to private school, so all their friends were showing up in BMWs and that kind of thing, right, on their 16th birthday, and so he looks at his dad, he goes, "Dad, what kind of car am I gonna get, you know, when I get my license?" And his dad looks at him, he goes, "You're driving it, son. This is your car." So,
That's great.
I know, and but I thought that was so it was so good because, you know, you have that temptation that when you know, especially in an environment like that where everybody is buying their kids the latest, greatest, and giving them just handing them everything,
Wow.
it's a big lesson, and, you know, now, you know, the son is married and he's doing well for himself and making his own money, and I'm sure they no longer have that van. But that he was driving the mom van,
Mhm.
the soccer van, and and then he had to drive his brothers around, so, you know.
That's great. That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
great.
it just I love that story. Okay, so let's get back to you guys. Now, you've been homesteading, homeschooling. I don't know if you know this, but years ago, Texas was not homeschool friendly.
Mhm.
I knew
Yes.
people who actually were threatened by CPS for homeschooling
Mhm.
their children. So this would have been 40 years
Mhm.
ago. So it's interesting now that Texas is seen as one of the most open and homeschool friendly. They certainly took a turn down
Yes.
Yeah,
there.
that's because, our forefathers, for lack of a better word, I guess,
Mhm,
Texas families, vehemently stood up and opposed, the government school system and the regulation, and they fought very hard politically. And when
mhm.
they overturned it, yeah, they made it
Yeah.
incredibly open
Mhm.
to and very solid for
Yeah.
homeschoolers.
That was back in the
Good.
'80s, and you're right, Mary. A lot of families had their children removed and went to jail and
Mhm,
served time in jail, while they fought that out. But yeah, Texas is very strong in, their homeschool rights and, uh, big homeschool communities
mhm,
everywhere. It's not unusual to see kids all during the week, just everywhere in grocery stores and the hardware stores, just,
mhm.
you know, living life. Yeah, so it's great.
Yeah, yeah, which I think is really good. I have a background in education, and one of the reasons I got out is because I didn't like the culture. I didn't like where things were going, the teachers themselves. There's so many issues, but one of them was I saw how much time was wasted, and
Mhm.
I realized you could get so much instruction done but you're spending so much time on logistics, just on moving
Mhm.
kids to and fro,
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
lining them up, getting them organized, taking them here, taking them there, and I thought, "Wow, you can get the instructional part done in 2, 3
Couple
hours,
hours.
3
Yes.
hours a
Yeah.
day."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could literally homeschool your kids in the time that it takes, and we see it every single day during the week. People lined up to pick up their children from school, drop off their children from school, and my little kids, they say it all the time. They're like, "The in the time that it takes them to wait in that line, mom, and then go back to that line again at 3:30. They could have homeschooled their kids,
Yep.
like literally just in that
Mm,
amount of time. But, people don't think of it like that. And I say, yeah, and then they got to go home and do homework. And our kids are like, what? Like more schoolwork after
yeah.
they've been there for 6 hours, Yeah.
I know, the pickup and drop off line, yeah, and then all the resources wasted, and
Yeah.
I mean, not even to mention, like, the food, the waste of food,
Hmm.
the it's a whole yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we could go down that rabbit trail.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
mean, the stuff they send in the lunch boxes and I
Hmm.
mean, the stuff kids throw away, it just and they're not learning to value any of that, right?
mhm.
Hmm.
Not to mention, like, the $100 sneakers that they're wearing in the clothing
What?
competitions and things like
Like,
Yeah.
that.
they're so well socialized, Mary. You don't understand. Those children are
Yeah, how are
so
they gonna
well
get socialized?
socialized.
I know, that's the thing. So you put people in a homogeneous group with people only their age and
Mhm,
expect them to learn social skills
mhm,
from it's I mean, talk about the blind leading the blind.
Mhm.
And
mhm.
now
Yeah.
and then you have teachers who are coming out of these universities that are steeped in Marxist indoctrination,
Right.
and those are the people that are feeding your kids all day long the
Yeah.
ideology that they have brought with them from the colleges.
Yeah.
No, no thanks, no thanks.
Yeah.
And I think it would be good to see more people moving toward homeschooling, and I know that that has become more popular. Have you seen a big change in that,
I
in the
think
last
so.
4 years?
Definitely. Since
Mhm.
2020, I think there was a big wake-up call that, parents that had never considered it before. My mom is one. She has adopted children, and she
Oh,
called me and she was like, telling me what they were having to do for public school at home. And I said, that's not homeschool. Like, no, that's crazy business and that's like torturing people, but like that's
mhm.
not homeschool. And so she found an
Yeah,
online curriculum and
yeah.
it's been great. And she's older than me, obviously, and she's doing
Mhm.
it and homeschooling kids. And yeah, so
Well,
it's
I just wanna say you look about 25. So whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. Yeah, and so but let's talk about that. Let's talk about why you look so healthy and young because you're pretty much you're homesteading and self-sustaining, growing your food, things like that. And I know, um, from what I can tell, you're sort of on the backside of the super hard stuff of
Mhm.
homesteading, I think. I mean, I think everything goes in cycles, but there's a lot probably to figure out when you first get there. Your kids are young, you're in a whole new
Yes.
area, you're learning all of this. We talked earlier about your internet, even that sucked. So,
Mhm.
so obviously it's not all sunshine and roses all the time. But from the perspective that you're in now, tell us a little some of the highs and lows, and then, would you if you had it to do over, what would you do differently?
Go ahead, you wanna
So, we used to call our homestead Death Acres,
Oh,
and
no.
about, 4 or 5 years, it just seemed that everything wanted to die, whether it was the plants, whether it was the chickens or the turkeys or the
Mhm.
ducks, and it did. There's definitely a learning
The
curve.
goats.
The goats, yeah, the
Mhm.
goats, the sheep,
The
They
cows.
just weren't
cows.
thriving, or did you have predators, or what was happening?
Predator, yeah, predators is a big
Disease.
thing. Predators and disease and
Mm,
the learning curve and just learning how to holistically combat these things and also learning when um pharmaceutically sometimes you just have to intervene. It's just
Mhm.
so we're not afraid of that either. And the entire premise of the idea, yes, is to grow your own food, to know where your food comes from, to be more self sufficient. But my larger idea was to have an environment for our children
Mhm.
because we couldn't, our boys were very young at the time. Our oldest was 9,
Mhm.
but without them, we wouldn't have been able to do any of it because we really uh, kind of we did it all together and most of the time my wife was pregnant, and so she couldn't help as much. And I was working an outside job, and we relied on them to kind of do. So a lot of that learning was them learning,
Mhm.
and
Mm,
through that maturation process, things fell into place. We got more land, so we got more grass, which makes it easier the more room you have. And but through that development process of developing our homestead, we developed responsible young men that could take all of that work ethic and all of that willingness to try, and it just transferred right over into the business world for them, and it
mm,
allowed them to just flourish.
Right. Yeah, they definitely learned a hard work ethic. And I don't regret, we've done all of the different animals over the years: sheep, rabbits,
mhm,
goats, chickens. We did all the dairy stuff with the cows, and it was hard work. I was right out there with them
mhm,
when I didn't have a little tiny baby or the baby was sleeping, and I was working and we were building, hoop houses and fence lines and doing all that stuff and clearing land and burning brush. I joke that I'm like, boy, if the me 10 years ago knew that I would still be burning 2 brush piles a day, like for fun, like, like I would just be like, wow, really? Like there's still brush? How? Like, how is that even possible? But
yeah,
it just keeps coming and you have to keep, to keep the land cleared out and nice. So anyway, but just by working together, it just really built a
mhm,
strong bond as a family. And we were in it together, and you can't
mhm,
get mad and you can't walk away. And we have to figure this out and get this done. And then over the years too, I mean, I don't regret any of the animals, or because it was a learning process and it built work ethic. But we've refined down to, okay, what really, really works and what's really, really efficient use of our
mhm,
time. Okay, chickens and cows basically is what we have.
okay,
And that is very doable and sustainable, especially now that the older three have had their own business for a couple of years. They're gone, from morning to night, basically every day, working off the farm. So the cows and the chickens are something that is very easy and realistic for us.
mhm, mhm. How many chickens do you have?
We have about 65, 70 chickens
Okay,
right now.
do you sell the eggs?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, so your boys, do you have it set up to where you have like a compound where they can build a house, when if they wanna start a family on your land? How is that set up?
Yeah, our oldest son is building his house. He's newly married, and about what 6 or 7 years ago, we bought a shed, and the three oldest boys converted it into a tiny house. They did all the plumbing, they did all the electric, they designed it, they laid it out, they finished it, and they were living in there. And so that was the beginning of their construction skills. Whatever it needed to be built around here, we would let them build it, and give them all the power tools. And now they have their own trailer with all the latest and greatest power tools.
Mhm.
And our idea of I got out of the market in 2008, and I think it's a Ponzi scheme. And well, I know it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a wealth distribution. It's that everybody wants to know, why does BlackRock, Blackstone, State Street, and Vanguard own everything? It's because we, the people, have given them all of our retirement dollars, and we financed our own demise by allowing them to be a monolithic mega corporation. So I got out in '08, and so we moved and had to start over again, and started to accumulate and have some savings. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do with this? Because I'm not going to do the conventional thing.
Mhm.
So we started investing in infrastructure and fruit trees and a tractor and a greenhouse. And that's what enabled us to continue to expand and grow. And then as you start thinking about that, I was like, that's great for us as a family. But what about when our children start having a family? And the old order, the way it used to be, even in Europe,
Mhm.
was that the family would have property. As the family grew and expanded, there would be a place for them. And so, if you have multiple families within a close proximity, you don't need three tractors. Maybe you need one tractor.
Right.
So now, if I have a tractor and say my oldest son wants to buy a skid steer or something, well, now we have a tractor and a skid
Mhm.
steer. So it
Mhm.
really kind of multiplies your ability if you create a community, because it's all about community, which is your neighbors. But as a family, it's just as much about family community.
Mhm.
And
Right.
if your kids just don't want to like get married and fly off to New York City to live in a high rise,
Mhm.
you can actually continue to grow as a family, learn as a family,
Right.
Mhm.
support one another as a family.
Yeah, and it always just made sense for to us too that like if they were going to invest all this time and energy into helping to clear the land and set up the fence lines and manage the animals and just get everything in place, like that would be really, really selfish of us to when they're 18 or 20 to be like, okay, see you later. Have fun redoing all that work
Right.
on your own property. Like,
Yeah.
no, they've done the blood, sweat, and tears like
Mhm.
right here. So of course, like we were just instilling that ever since they were little, like, no, this is your land, like this
Mhm.
is yours, this is your house. I mean, me and daddy are living in it right now, but when we're going to get old and we're going to die someday, and this is your house to do whatever
Mhm.
you want with it. And you can build houses wherever you want, or if they decided to build a barn or a shop or whatever, and we think we're going to put it here, okay, good, do it. Like, I mean, as long as it wasn't something totally crazy, we were like, yeah, do it. You do it how you
Mhm.
want it, because this is yours. This is, you own this. So just instilling that ownership with them. And we had
Interesting.
some good examples too. I mean,
Yeah.
my family was a really close knit family, and farm, my grandparents, they lived on a farm, all of their children, family business, so we saw the benefits of that, as far as like you were saying. And even like in shows that we watched while they were growing up, the oldest ones was just like Alaska, the Last Frontier, and like you're saying,
Mhm.
Homestead Rescue, or like
Yeah.
things that instilled like there was another Alaska family that we used to watch all the time too, and they were very reliant on each other, and we wanted to
Mhm.
build that sense with our oldest boys, and now with our youngest three too, of just like, we need each other. Like, no, I need your help to do this. I need you,
Mhm. Yeah, that's something that is definitely lacking in today's society, and I think, well, I know a lot of that is intentional, that, you know, the idea is that you separate, you break down the family unit so
Mhm.
that you don't have what you just described, and we've
Mhm,
seen that, in the church. The
mhm,
divorce is very high in the church, broken families, families scattered to the winds across the country, and, not having the values that you're describing, and what you're doing, it's very much reflective of like a 19th century, early 20th century ethos when it comes to raising families and having cohesive family units, which I hope that we're going to see more and more of that.
yeah,
It's interesting because Elon Musk. The news yesterday was that his 14th child was just born, and I
wow,
don't know if you saw that. So the
That
man,
is
he's African, um, and, uh, and he's fathering children, but at the same time, what what values are being instilled? And I like Elon. I mean, he's odd and very out there, but, and it doesn't diminish the things that he's doing to serve our country and that kind of thing, but in terms of the way family works, it's almost like he's just sort of trying to, like, populate the earth.
Mhm.
But there's a big missing piece,
Yes, yeah.
which is what you just described. So I think, I hope that we're gonna see a resurgence of what you're talking about and what you're doing. And I wanna ask you a little bit about the online culture, because we're seeing a big influx of homesteading channels on Instagram and YouTube and things like that, and I think there's a little bit of glamorization there, and I do wanna touch on that. We need to take a quick break, so we'll come back and talk about that, and, I also wanna talk about some of the political things that we see happening in especially around food. So we'll come back to that. Everyone who's listening, don't go away. I have with me TD and Faith, the fearless Texas boys family who are homesteading, homeschooling, and uh, really cementing a culture of greatness and family cohesion right there in Texas, in the good old USA. So I wanted to share everybody. Speaking of Texas, we have one of our sponsors here on the show is griddownchowdown.com. They work with local farmers and ranchers to source grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and this is a freeze-dried beef. And anybody that wants to make a meal with ground beef, all you have to do is rehydrate this, and it's regular ground beef, high quality. When you buy it, you're supporting American farmers and ranchers. You're helping save American farmland from the big corporations, which TD mentioned, the BlackRocks and the Vanguards. And so this company works with and sources their beef from local farmers and ranchers. Right now, when you buy a 24 serving subscription using promo code Mary Grace, you're going to get 4 servings for free. And this is one of our best sponsors on the show, 24 serving subscription. That's a monthly or bi-monthly. They send it to you like clockwork. You're going to get 4 servings free. Use promo code Mary Grace. We're going to hear from these guys, and we're going to hear from one other sponsor, and we will be right back.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is my brother. And I'm Nace, and we're the Grid Down Chowdown. And this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with. Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's awesome.
We've been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal.
Right.
What it's been fed. And so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years.
How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch?
Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Go to griddownchowdown.com. Americans spend more now than ever on healthcare, and we're sicker than almost anybody in the world. We've put our trust in a system that's completely let us down. Dr. Troy Sproul and the team at Synapse Center for Health and Healing have changed all that. They are a functional medicine clinic, and they get to the root cause of what's made you sick in the first place. Once they do that, they give you solutions to help you get out of that. This is the way that medicine was meant to be practiced, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the entire system from the inside out, one person at a time, and you could be one of those people. And so when you're working with the team at Synapse, they're giving you solutions and not just prescriptions. That's a game changer for me. When you set up a free discovery call with Synapse, you're starting on a journey of healing. You're starting on a journey of getting answers. And that's why I've partnered with them, because I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want you to have all of the resources that you need to steward the body and the health that God's given you. Go to officialsynapse.com and tell them Mary Grace sent you. That's Official Synapse, SYNAPSE. And we are back. I want to throw up a couple of QR codes here just to remind people. This is how you can get the griddownchowdown.com. You can scan that, griddownchowdown.com, promo code Mary Grace. This is Official Synapse. synapse.com. It's synapse.com. Use promo code Mary Grace. And while we're here, I want to remind everybody that if you missed the show, if you didn't get the notification, you can always get an email from me. I send emails out before the show. Go to marygracemedia.com, get on the mailing list, and also anything that you missed from our partners, from our sponsors, you can find it on the website. Go under marygracemedia.com, click on the shopping tab, and it's all right there. We've got some great partners right on the website, and anytime you shop from them, you're supporting this channel, The Mary Grace Show. That helps us to keep going week after week and bringing you great content like this. So we're back now with our guest. We have TD and Faith, the Fearless family, also known as the Texas Boys. They actually have their own podcast called Fearless. And one of the things that they do is talk a lot about current issues of the day. And before we went to the break, we were talking about a couple of things. One is the homeschooling, I guess, renaissance, which we see all over social media. I think some of it's glamorized, which is how people get into trouble when we see the Homestead Rescue Show. People have the internet version of homesteading, and then they have the real life version of homesteading. Have you come across that in your own network? Like, what is it like? Do you think the internet has helped or hurt homesteading?
I think both. I think both. I think internet is a great tool to just expose people to different ideas and different ways of life that they might not have considered before, and to see the benefits of those different ways of life. And I think that that's happening, like you had mentioned before the break too, with traditional family. You see this resurgence of the traditional family roles, mothers, desiring to stay home, to disciple, train, raise, teach their own children, and this resurgence of fathers, being strong leaders in the home and providers and nurturers and protectors for the family. So I think that they're all good ways. Of course, in anything, people want to see the shiny, finished touch, the homestead. That's what they want to see. They don't want to
Mhm.
see the dirty chicken coop and the mom with the crying baby on her hip while she's trying to homeschool 5 kids. Like, that doesn't sell.
They don't want to see all the dirt and everything that's
Yes.
associated. And we would kind of talk about that before. We used to make a lot more homestead content, but now that the boys, our son was the editor and the filmer, so now that they have their own construction company, there's not a lot of editing and filming.
We've learned. We've picked
We're,
up
we're
the
trying. We're
yeah,
trying.
we're trying to pick up where he left off.
Okay.
And he's still producing videos and
Mhm.
editing and doing things too. Him and his
Mhm.
wife are running the website, and they are trying to put out like a video once a week. And his are very much
Very well
higher
done.
quality
Yeah.
than ours. But yeah, just speaking to, like, they are higher quality, that people want to see what sells, are these videos that are 20, 30-second clips that are put to some good music that,
Yeah.
people look nice, they got it together, that kind of thing. Of
Yeah.
course, that's not reality. Like, we know that, and I think in the past, I don't know, couple years, I think that some light has been shed on that too. That, like, I've heard different people say, well, obviously, like, that's Instagram or whatever. That's not reality. My house doesn't look like
Mhm.
this all of the time. There's been some farm families that have been, very vulnerable and just said, like, hey, there are videos, but that's not real life all the time.
Right.
We're turning off the camera when the 2-year-old falls apart in the kitchen, like, nobody wants to see that. That's okay. You
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think some of the real life stuff is good, but I think there's a balance, right? Because you also don't want to capitalize on your kids. Like,
know,
there's a
Right.
fine line there, and they are gonna grow up. They are gonna see that content one day.
yeah.
And is it gonna help them or harm them? That's always something to think about. And I think about that because I've thought about doing a channel about taking care of my dad, right? Because he's elderly, and a lot of people are doing that. But then I think about the privacy issues, and I think
Mhm.
about, violating his boundaries,
Mhm.
and that's a very real consideration. But, and the dirt part is definitely a big deal because you see these sort of like highly polished, sanitized kitchens. And I mean, I don't know about you, but the minute I start to cook something, that goes out the window. Like there's no surface that's untouched. And
Right.
you have these women who are making their sourdough bread, and there's not a single thing out of place on the counter. And like, there's no cats on the counter. My cats, like, they somehow know. They're like, "Let me just jump up here when your hands are dirty and you can't move them."
Right.
And you're
Right.
thinking, "Oh, okay, that's reality." Or,
Mhm.
kids, right? That your kids are
Mhm.
helping, and then next thing you know, there's a flood coming out of the bathroom, and, you're living real life, and then you're trying to present this version that's polished. And when I when I watch that homestead rescue video, one thing that really strikes me is the amount of stuff that people have on their properties, because in many cases they're doing remote living and they're collecting stuff. They're
Oh.
collecting old windows or lumber or barrels or fencing or stuff like that, and they don't necessarily have a way to store it or an organized system for keeping track of it. And so there's just stuff everywhere, right? And you think, okay, this is a real homestead. Like, this is people's life.
Mhm.
And I think more people do need to understand that. I hope that it doesn't put people off, right? Because I think it's incredibly valuable. And we grew up, my mom's family on my grandmother's side, they had a home, like a homestead. And we would spend a lot of time there. And they were very old school. They were, you know, early, like, depression era, um aunts and uncles. And there was always garden, there was always livestock. We would go out and lick the salt lick, every time we we were around. But they had rain barrels. They repurposed everything.
Mhm.
They were always inventing things. Like my Aunt Bunny, if you couldn't do it with aluminum foil and duct tape, then it wasn't worth doing, right? And so we I'm glad that I had that influence. And then my stepdad, like, he's 87, and we have a drawer. It's a government surplus, big giant tool drawer that has all the little drawers in it. It's like a big
Mhm.
cabinet. And I mean, there's always something in there that we need. Like, we needed hose washers one day,
Mhm.
and he came in and he was, rooting around in that drawer, and he comes out with a whole pack of hose washers. And, most of the time, people normally would just jump in the car, go to Lowe's, go
Uh-huh.
buy, and, it's like, you need a bolt, you need a washer, check the drawer. And
Mhm.
it's even that kind of mindset, right? That I think we've lost, that we're constantly just buying something new and not trying to fix something or not trying to replace something or see if you already have it. Because again, we see that sanitized version of somebody's house where everything is perfect, everything's in place, there's nothing on the counters. And I don't think that's real. I don't think that's realistic. I mean,
Right.
you kind of drive yourself crazy if you
Yeah.
try to achieve that. Um, so anything else about homeschooling, or homesteading, that you think would be good? Like, if you had it to do over, or you were talking to new people who are kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, what are some top things that you would say, let's let's just let's, think clearly
Yeah.
about let us give you some sober advice. What are some things that you would say to a younger family that is doing this?
I would say prioritize. Prioritize if you're relocating, you're strategically relocating, have your priority list. Make sure that where you're moving to you're cool with the pros and the cons of it, whether it's tornadoes and rattlesnakes or whether it's, floods and drought or whatever it is, just be aware of that. And then the other thing is, prioritize your homeschool. We just focused on reading, writing, and math for those lower ages. We didn't even bother with the other stuff until they got older, and able
Mhm.
to really get into it and be interested in the other things. And
Mm.
we did a lot of self-led learning too, which has worked out well for them, because
Mhm.
they've been able to pursue their own interests. And so prioritizing your homeschool, not getting bogged down with like some big box curriculum with 9 subjects. And then that frees up the children's
Mm.
time to have interest-led learning. And with Homestead, the same, just prioritize. You might not need every animal that's on Instagram. You might
Yeah,
just,
that's what we've seen with homesteading is people want to dive in head first and they want to do all the stuff and get all the things. And the point is well, you need infrastructure. So if you put thought into it, and a lot of it is out of fear, and rightly so. I
Mhm.
mean, when there's no food at the store, so they're like, yeah, we gotta get this dirt and we gotta plant stuff in the ground and we gotta go. And that's where a lot of the problems come in. But if you're more methodical and thoughtful about it,
Okay.
and you don't have to do it all at once, and
Mhm.
it is going to take time, and then there is going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be a learning curve if you already know it all already, because your individual piece of property is going to have different types of elevation, different types of microclimates, and all these different
Mhm.
things in the soil that you're going to have to work through. And sometimes you're going to put the chicken, we'll put the chicken coop here, but I didn't notice when we built the chicken coop that it was in a low spot, and now every time it rains really hard, it's a big mud puddle.
Mhm.
So there's those
Mhm.
kind of things where if you're more thoughtful about it and not
Mhm.
as reactionary, you're going to yeah, it's going to take
Mm.
longer, but you're probably only have to do it once. You won't have to do it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Okay.
And having temporary setups in the beginning too, so they are movable, so that way you can kind of observe the land and move things around, move, structures
Mm.
around and things like that, not building permanent, big, expensive barns and things like that that can't be
Okay.
moved in the beginning. That's a big deal. And just prioritizing, like I said, if it's just like, okay, so what's the top priority? What's the biggest bang for our buck? Let's just raise a couple steer. Like, how could we do that? Like, how could we just do we
Mhm.
have to lease some pasture? Can we go in on a lease with some friends and lease a piece of ground and just grow up a couple steer a year? Like,
Right.
that would be a really big bang for your buck. So, yeah, that's
Interesting.
all.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't even necessarily have to own the land if you're
No.
able to find a place where you can. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot there, and I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about the political regulatory government side of things. You're now under the Trump administration. One of the big things that we keep hearing about is eggs. And that's it's a big issue. But can you explain for people maybe who don't know? I mean, you have 65 chickens, but a big factory farm has like how many chickens? And
Thousands of
Mhm.
chickens. Yeah.
yeah. So when it comes to raising chickens and raising eggs, have you felt the impact of what is going on with the so-called bird flu? How has that affected you and your homestead?
Not at all. And I think that, like our grandparents on both sides, they farmed, they went through the Great Depression, and they said they didn't even know there was a Great Depression until they went into town. I mean, I think that's the goal, right? Is like, and my other grandparents on my father's side, when they came and put the electricity poles in down the street, my great grandmother said, "Why would I need that? I've lived without it my whole entire life. Why?" And she said, "Okay, well, maybe put one down there at the garage, the men might want to call their families or something if there's an
Mhm.
emergency. But yeah, I don't need one. I've lived without it. So I think that is the goal, to be
Yeah.
untouched by the politics. To our goal is to just live in peace and live, you know, with our own families and communities. And it did play into our strategic relocation too, being in a very conservative place in the country. I mean, that politics, it doesn't really impact us very much because we're in a really conservative area anyway. But
Mhm.
I think the Amish and Mennonites are kind of like that in different parts of the country, that
Yeah.
they would have no idea what the impact is really. I mean,
And a lot of it with legacy thinking, if you're thinking 70 years, if you're thinking legacy, you're thinking multiple administrations, right? And so the way that if you're thoughtful about it and you want to structure your life, is like, we want to try to operate in a way that regardless of who the administration is, you know, we want, and granted, they mucks a lot, and they meddle, and they
Yeah.
and they obfuscate and all these different things.
Yeah.
But we do try to, like, regardless, Jim Rohn talks about that as far as you know, who gets elected and whatnot. But we try to live in a way so that it doesn't matter. And clearly we understand that it definitely affects all of us, but we try to live in a way so it doesn't matter who's running the
Mm.
show.
Yeah, 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 that's it's very interesting, and, you said something about kind of the mindset, or I got it went out of my head. We'll come back to it.
yeah.
Um, so I
Yeah,
had
it's like
I
the cows, the chickens, they don't know who's in charge.
Mhm,
They have
mhm.
no idea. They keep
Yeah,
having babies, and
yeah,
we keep taking cows as we need to the processor, and our freezer stays full. And, if
mhm,
you have dairy cows, she would still come into milk as she calves. And, so just being less reliant on the system overall. And then obviously it's just, I mean, politics or politics, yeah, it can get really bad. We've seen Germany and things that have happened in the past, and that would
mhm.
definitely affect us, if things got
Yeah,
really severe. Obviously, it affects
mhm,
everybody, but in our day to day, when we pull in the gates and we're taking care of our farm and the kids,
mhm.
it's the politics are really irrelevant.
Interesting. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. The illegal immigrant situation. We see, obviously, I mean, you're in Texas. So, what type of impact has that had on your community, if
So
any?
the reason we chose Northeast Texas
Mhm,
is, one, it's green here. It actually rains here and it's beautiful here. But I wanted to be as far away. And this was 11 years ago. I wanted to be as far away from the border as we could be.
mhm.
And interestingly enough, we've made some trips to the border and down to SpaceX and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised at that time, because that was several years, 4 years ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised at the activity I didn't see at the border, because I was expecting to see stuff. Now, I know Brownsville, I know certain towns are like a super highway of illegal activity. So I'm not trying to make light of it, because it's definitely real.
Yeah.
But as far as what we have personally experienced
Mhm.
about the illegal immigrant invasion, which is very real,
Mhm.
we have not experienced anything
Right.
where we are.
Well, no, but if you go closer to the cities,
Yes,
like Dallas or Houston and things
it's an
like that,
issue.
you're
It's
going to
definitely an
definitely
issue.
see an issue. And we did
Mhm.
get to experience that back in the summer because our little girl broke her arm really severely.
Yes, that's
And we
true.
were at Children's Hospital, and the immigrant influx there at the hospital, people abusing the children's hospitals for non-emergency
Mhm.
Yeah.
healthcare,
Yeah.
was ridiculous. And so
Yeah, we were the only Americans in line, and we were the only English speakers in line at
yeah,
Dallas Children's Hospital,
and they were
and
not
we were at the back
Wow.
of the
emergencies.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a huge line. Twice we found ourselves in the back of a huge line within that week that we were there. And that was frustrating because it was like, okay, these are not emergencies
Yeah.
that are ahead of me. And
Mhm.
none of these people speak
Pay taxes.
English,
Right.
I mean, I don't know if they, yeah, I don't know. That was a frustration. And we've seen
Mhm.
also when we were around Dallas area, like just you could see some activities that were you would have expected to see that in Mexico, kind of activities going on in like the Home Depot parking lot and things like that. You're like, wow, where am I?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
am
Yeah.
very
I?
true.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's out there.
It's interesting because the President Trump signed an EO making English the official language of the United States, and a lot of people are saying, "Wait, wasn't it already?"
Right,
And,
right.
right, and so I'm curious to see, like, if you were to go there today or tomorrow down to the children's hospital. I hope you don't have to.
Yes.
But if you were, what would you see? If you went to the Home Depot, what would you see?
Mhm.
I'm hearing that things are kind of clearing out. They haven't had nearly the number of border encounters that they've had even a month ago. The numbers
Yes.
are way, way down.
That's
They're
good.
now giving people an opportunity to register online and basically make themselves known to the administration as a way of um, bridging the gap, right? So if they've been here, they've been working, they've been productive, and they don't want to just get deported with no chance of ever coming back, they're giving them a chance to, get into the system. And they still have to go back, but they're not going back as fugitives,
Mhm.
basically.
That's
Um,
great. I think that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so intertwined down here, and I'm sure a lot of the border states are the same way, that it's
mhm,
like we have, we have a lot of people from, Mexico, South America. We have a lot of people from all over, but it's so intermingled culturally, and it always has been. I mean, the history of
yeah,
Texas, I
yeah,
mean, it always has been. Our land
mhm,
that we live on was Mexican land. It has
mhm,
Mexican names, so it's just like it's a very interesting dynamic.
mhm,
And I know our friends Stacy and Chris over at Financial Prepper, they were talking about this issue not that long ago on one of
mhm,
their episodes. And they said they were really sad because one of the vet techs that they've had for, like, I don't know, 15 years or
mhm,
something, she was being deported. And, she's she's a working person, and she's a really great person. And they were really sad about it, and they're very conservative minded. But it's like, okay, so how do we do this that's like with humanity,
mhm, mhm,
and there's people that are legitly here working, bringing value to our country
mhm.
too. So how
Right,
does
and assimilate. I think assimilation is a key that,
Mhm,
like, what you described in the emergency room, that's not what this is supposed to be about.
mhm,
And then you have people like the vet tech who are working,
mhm,
assimilating, hopefully learning English.
mhm,
Um, and I know I was talking to somebody from Honduras who came here illegally, brought their child during the Obama years. So the grown child now is a DACA recipient, and they're protected under that, but the mother is not protected, um, as the parent, and they've been here for 20 years,
yeah,
working hard.
yeah,
And yet still they in the eyes of the law, like they are illegal. They broke the law. And when you have somebody like that, to me, it is I'm glad to see this policy. Okay,
yes,
register.
mhm,
You are gonna have to go back in most cases, but you're gonna be given priority to come back and, get into the green card line to do things legally the right way. For
Mhm.
whatever reason that you chose not to do it the right way to begin with, we can cross that bridge as long as you don't have a record, as long as you don't have run-ins with the law.
Mhm.
So, and there's different reasons that people haven't gone through the legal process. It's very expensive.
Mhm.
And, just like in any profession, there are immigration attorneys that are frauds.
Yeah,
And, people hand over their money to go through the process of getting legal, and they get robbed, or
right.
the attorney sucks. And I
Mhm.
mean, I've heard stories like that,
Mhm.
where they were trying to do the right thing, and
Mhm.
they got a really bad attorney. I've also heard other stories where people have worked with attorneys that were very good, that got them their green card within 6 to 9 months, and help them get on their way to citizenship. And, but we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it's wrong to charge for that. I'm saying that I can understand, especially when you come in under, like, the Obama administration, and you have all of these NGOs, just like they did with the Biden administration. They are bringing people in bad faith. They're lying to them. They're manipulating. They are exploiting a situation of people's vulnerability and making millions and billions of dollars in the process. And so, on the one hand, yes, the people who came illegally did not do it correctly, but also the organizations, the charities, the NGOs that have exploited the situation and profited from it, why not prosecute them? Because,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
they have facilitated this invasion,
Mhm.
our own government, which we found out through USAID. So I don't think it's a simple situation. I think
No,
it is
it's never simple,
it's
yeah.
ethically and morally, there are a lot of questions about it. But at the same time, as Americans, I think that we have been emotionally manipulated into accepting everything,
Mhm.
and to being gaslit into thinking, well, if you don't accept this, then you're a racist, a xenophobe,
Mhm.
and you don't even deserve to call yourself an American. And and the goodwill of the American people has been exploited, and it's time for that to stop. And this is why people are so frustrated. You're being taxed, you know, 47 ways a day, and then you're being told that you're bad because you want
Mhm.
somebody who's in line at the hospital who hasn't paid a nickel in taxes to let you go first,
Right. Who
right?
doesn't have an
Right.
emergency? It's not even an emergency.
Right. I
I'm
mean,
like,
somebody with a hangnail, you know?
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's the kind of thing that I think really we have to have strong people who are willing to speak about it, people
Mhm.
like President Trump, who are willing to say, "No, you can't cut to the front of the line. You
Mhm.
cannot take over, and exploit the goodwill of the American people anymore. Enough is enough."
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that if we felt anything too when the borders were wide open,
Mhm.
was just more cautious, just like
Yeah.
everything was heightened,
Pay attention.
our sense of safety. We have three older boys, one's an adult, that, they're out and about, they're doing business, they're in and out of hardware stores and Home Depots, and they're all over the place. And
Mhm.
it was just like, keep your head on a swivel, pay attention, be aware, this isn't, you can't just not pay attention and just walk around town right now. Like, you just have to pay attention, because we don't know. Or even, being home, just making sure the doors are locked, making sure the gate is closed, making sure my little kids, hey, you don't need to be out by the road where people can see you still, I mean, we're
Yeah.
only a few hours from Mexico, it wouldn't take much
Mhm.
to swipe a kid. And the human trafficking,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Wow.
definitely was a heightened sense of awareness, still
Mhm.
is.
Mhm.
And it should be for everybody, regardless whether you live in
Right.
Texas or not. That
Yeah.
should be a
Oh,
heightened
yeah,
sense.
we have it here. I mean, we are in, we're I'm in Central Virginia, and, we're a couple of hours from the coast. We are, close to, an hour from 95,
Mhm.
major
Mhm.
Right.
interstate, an hour from 81, north and south
Mhm.
thruway for trafficking. And I've actually been in situations like I was in Target one day and I saw a man stalking a woman and her baby
Mhm.
and watched it happening, you know? And so it's and this was a few years ago, but it's one of those things, it's all over. And
Mhm.
the other thing I noticed is that all the merchandise is locked up and the Walmart and the Lowe's and the Home Depot. You can't just, get a screwdriver and go pay for it anymore.
Right.
You can't get a Sawzall in the box and carry it up to the register because that culture of lawlessness has been brought into our country.
Mhm.
And I would really like to see that change because the people who speak up against it again are told that they're the problem.
Right.
And to me, it's like the speed bump effect. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you live in a neighborhood where a couple people are speeding through the neighborhood and you can't get them to slow down, the next thing you know, you've got those speed bumps all over the neighborhood. And so the
Mhm.
law-abiding people are having to slow down and go over the speed bumps. And then there's
Mhm.
always somebody who has it in front of their house. And so you've got this big hump of concrete in front of your curb,
Mhm.
and everybody else is paying and being punished for the lawlessness of people who should be made brought to account
Yeah.
for their lawlessness. It's just like the TSA, right?
Mhm.
That never should have been. We shouldn't have to be groped in the airport because of
Hmm.
the lawlessness of a few people.
Mhm.
So that's a rabbit trail we could go down. But I'm glad you guys are safe. It would be interesting though, like go to the children's hospital. That would be a good experiment.
Yeah, I wish
And
I mean, if it hadn't been an emergency both times that we were there, like a really serious emergency both
Very
times we
serious.
were there, I mean, we would have pulled out our phone and documented it. I'm like, "This is amazing."
Yeah,
Like,
it was
this is
incredible.
yeah.
unbelievable this is happening in a children's hospital, like, this is a premium place that you would go to get care for your child if it's
Mhm.
something very specialized, and, like, this is
Yeah.
nuts, like, they're waiting for well baby checkups, like, this is crazy sauce, but, yeah, I think there has to be something with, being humane, like, I don't know if people wanna be here and they are working and they can prove that they are working and they're willing to pay taxes, I mean, it's gotta be a different process than somebody who I think, it has criminal activity, has bad intentions on being here, or is just
Mhm.
here to, get on the dole
Global
and
welfare.
just
Yeah.
sit back,
Stuck
and
yeah.
we have enough American citizens that are
That are on
that's
global
an
welfare.
epidemic
Yeah.
all on its own. We don't need
We
any help.
Yes, well, and our veterans. I mean, anytime I
Hmm.
see this happening, all I can think is that every single veteran, especially with any injury or disability, should be not only at the top of the list, but getting 5-star care and
Yes.
treatment. And that it's so complicated and so hard for them to even
Mhm.
even to get into the system.
Yeah.
And so that is really, to me, that should be one of the biggest priorities, at
Yeah.
100%. And so I think I feel good about what's happening right now with this administration. I feel like there's a lot of thought and planning that has gone
Mhm.
into the decisions that are being made, and
Mhm.
it's not going to be perfect. None is, because you have real people working on real
Mhm.
situations, and you have opposition coming at you, no matter who you are, from different sides. And the thing is, you can't fire Congress. You can't. If you're the president, the people have to do that,
Mhm.
and so it's not simple, but I think we are in a better position. We're coming up on time here, and I wanted to give you both a chance to get in the last word and also tell people how to follow you and how to support what you're doing. Um, Let us know.
Yeah. So, we are, you can find us at our website, thetexasboys.com. You can find the Fearless podcast over there as well. We just have a little homestead. We source all our stuff locally from other homesteads, and we have our own line of coffee. We have honey. We have lots of different uh, cool stuff to check us out over there. And then we are on YouTube. We are the Texas Boys on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on Twitter. And then the podcast is on all of your, wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm putting your website up here. So that's awesome. Do you have anything else to add, Faith?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all. I hope that people are encouraged today. I think it's a lot more simple. If you keep life simple, it can be very, very simple. It's just what you make it to be. And yeah, I hope we just encourage somebody in
Yes, I think
direction
so.
today.
I think so, and it was a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you guys coming. By the way, to my listeners, I was a guest on the podcast with TD, and you can find that wherever their podcasts are. It was a couple of weeks ago. We had a great conversation, a lot of it about the carnivore lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so it was a wonderful conversation, and I will share it here on the social media and send everybody to that. So thank you again for being here. I want to remind everybody, please go to marygracemedia.com to keep track of what we're doing here on the show, and to get on the mailing list so that you don't miss a show. Also, go ahead and go on the shopping tab and see what we have to offer over there. There's a lot. We have a lot of partners that we work with, and we will continue to update that on a week by week basis. Everybody have a great day, and thank you again for being here. We will be back with the Mary Grace Show with more great episodes. Get on the mailing list, and we will keep you notified as we come on the show. Thank you to all of my live stream audience, as always, and thank you to all the replay listeners. We will see you back here soon on the Mary Grace Show.
Thanks, Mary Grace.